All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here today. And so good to see all of you on a Saturday afternoon. So today, Tenopy is pleased to present to you a presentation by our pedagogy lead, Dr. Tan Liang See. And today she'll be going through basically getting ready for secondary school. So this webinar entails two main points that many parents will be dying to know. Okay, number one, it will cover the new PSLE format, PSLE 2021. Because as we all know, PSLE is now taking a different approach. We're going to move away from the T-score system to what is known as achievement levels. So this webinar is targeted especially to help parents understand what differences there are and what does this mean for your child. The second part of our webinar will also focus on the differences in primary school and secondary school life, which is obviously important because as your child transits into his or her new environment, it is crucial to know what to expect so that we can be prepared for the challenges that lie ahead. It's going to be a very big milestone for your child, for sure. If you have children going into secondary school in the next 2 or 3 years, right, it's going to be a huge challenge. So hopefully this webinar will help to answer a few questions and as well as to basically get you guys, a rough idea of what to expect. So without further ado, I will pass the time now to Dr. Tan, and she will explain more about what you can expect when your child transits from primary school to secondary school. So Dr. Tan, if you please.
Hi, good afternoon, parents. Thank you for the introduction, Eddie. Yeah. Let me do a little bit of self-introduction. And okay, I have a NUS Bachelor of Arts degree, honors degree, and that was in the 1980s. And in the 1990s, I got my Master of Science in Education from Purdue University, the United States, specialized in gifted education. And in 2011, after my children are older, I decided to adjourn into my PhD study. So I have altogether taught 32 years. And during my teaching years, I actually helped the school to actually establish a school-based gifted education program that was from 1993 to 1998. Yeah, from 1999 onwards, the MOE actually gave us the students, and so that will be under the MOE GEP program. So in 2000, I was honored to receive President Award for Teachers, and that's 20 years ago. So my career continued with the school up to 2005, where I decided to move on to National Institute of Education, where I taught PGDE training teachers and all that. And I spent about 7 years with an academic group, and then another 7 years with Office of Education Research. So this is the amount of project funding I was awarded in the last 7 years before I left the institution. And this is my citation in text, and I also actually edited a book on curriculum for high ability learners. Well, the idea of high ability learners is actually very specific. However, there are many good pedagogies are not specially created for high ability learners. In fact, it is good for all learners. And after my retirement, I actually hope to share these so-called pedagogies to more teachers. And that's why I work with Tenopy. So, so much about myself. Let's go into the main topic of discussion. So in Singapore, our education developmental phases can be viewed in terms of 4 stages. The first stage is really the survival stage. In the since we were independent in 1965, you know that Singapore has a lot of people who receive very little education. So Singapore was in a survival mode, and we try to educate each and every single student as far as possible. And after about 10, 15 years of effort, we managed to do that. And however, it is still not very ideal. And we noticed that we need to also focus on the efficiency level of the education system. That's where the system introduced the streaming in 1984. So with this efficiency model, we managed to reduce the attrition rate. Yeah. And in fact, today, if not all our children are being educated, we have a compulsory education only started in 2000. Yeah. So right now we are in this phase where we are actually valuing the student. We like to have a student actually teach according to their ability and also their exploration. Not only that, we also place a lot of importance in terms of values among our students. Yeah. So we know that one of the milestones that all our students will have to go through, including myself, is PSLE, right? Primary School Leaving Examination. And we also know that the latest announcement by 2021, the PSLE will have a new scoring system. The new scoring system will go by achievement level of each subject, and then when we add up all the subjects, it will have an aggregated achievement score. So this is very different from previously where we have a 3-digit T-score. So you might be interested to know the history of PSLE, if I may share. Now, in 1960, March 30th, Mr. Yong, then the education minister, actually announced the implementation of PSLE. So the very first PSLE took place on 2nd to 4th of November 1960. And you can imagine, the announcement was in 1960 March, and the examination took place in November same year. So obviously, many teachers, educators, and students and parents was actually caught off guard. Anyway, the papers were set in 4 official languages, and because during that time we still have different, English was not the main medium of instruction. So there were more than 30,000 candidates in 1960 PSLE sitting. Only a third of the candidates passed the examination. Yeah, so we can see that we have very high attrition rate. If you may, it's like 2/3 of the students cannot even meet the PSLE standard. So we really had a problem, and so go back to the our education developmental phases. We know that our government actually worked very hard to actually put in place good education system. Since 1973, PSLE has been standardized. Yeah, so it took about 15 years for the government to standardize the PSLE. And by then, there are 4 examinable subjects, and also there's a use of T-score for MOE internal reference. Yeah, so that is the born of PSLE in a very standardized format. Now, in 1980, MOE not only reviewed the T-score and the grade, it also reviewed the lowest and the highest marks of that particular year or particular cohort. Yeah. So before 1980, actually, all the candidates do not have a PSLE T-score. You either pass or you're retained, right? And during that time, many of our fellow Singaporeans were actually struggling, to make a living, and many people, leave the education and just focus on getting a job or learning a skill. However, after our economy take a leap in 1980s and 1990s, there is increased comment about stress being very stressful because of PSLE. And therefore, in 2012, MOE decided to review only the grade and the T-score. Okay, they keep the lowest and the highest marks for their own reference only. So for so many years, and now PSLE is going to have a new shift again in next year, 2021. It is a very exciting year for all teachers and students. So the question is PSLE really a terminal examination? Of course it is not. It is a high-stake examination. All of us should be concerned, but not overly concerned about this PSLE. If we are overly concerned, then we are applying a lot of stress, not only to our children, but also ourselves. And it becomes a societal problem, right? So how to actually make PSLE an experience rather than a terminal examination only, and that it will take a lot from the parents to be able to navigate this or manage this. For example, I've observed many parents take a last minute approach in helping the child to prepare PSLE by taking no pay leave or leave the job for a year just to keep the child company. However, I do not think this is a good idea because having a physical presence at home might give the signal to the child that, oh wow, PSLE is such a big thing that my parents even willing to take a year off from work in order to make this happen. And all this will signal to the child that I better be the top scorer, otherwise I'm not going to be forgiven by my parents. And therefore the stress is at its highest level. So if you are working parents, please continue to work even if your child is going to take PSLE. Yeah, the support can come in many ways. Next is about the supervision and the guidance. I think personally, supervision and guidance should take place, since day one of your child's. Yeah, learning is part and parcel of life, and we now are focusing on so-called lifelong learning. So learning is not only learning how to take examination. Learning means a lot more than taking examination, and therefore building a good habit to help the child to learn, to actually build good habit in learning and focus on learning or having a mindset in learning is utmost important. It's more important than knowing how to take the examination, isn't it? So I like to actually encourage parents that PSLE is not the last examination that the child can take. In fact, the last examination will be a PhD. Yeah. So, but we know that not many people would like to take PhD as well. It depends on the interest and the effort and also the context. Yeah. So PSLE is only one of ways where we actually embark on our learning journey, but that is surely not the only way. So let's now look at the Singapore system, whether or not this PSLE is really so terminal, or it is actually only the first milestone of your child's educational journey. We all have learned, we all have played this board game, right? Snake and ladder board game. I'm sure you have. Now, in this game, we can see that there are many places where the child can skip and promote, yeah, but there are also places where they can slip down and then go back. So, that our education is something like the snake and ladder game, and there are many actually lean pinch around to help the child to be promoted to the next level. Or if the child need to take more time to learn, there are also opportunities to do that. So if we look at this overview of Singapore's education system, you notice that, primary school takes 6 years and is quite standard. Then after that, they'll be placed to the secondary school context in either 4 or 5 years, depending on their PSLE. Yeah. So you might say that because of the association of PSLE T-score or AL aggregated score is associated with posting, and therefore, we have to be very careful about it. I agree with you. However, we should not be too stressed about it because Singapore have many, many good schools. Now, I'm not sure whether or not you notice that there are different types of schools in Singapore. Yeah, so maybe we have a brief description of this. So in Singapore, all schools are government school, including independent school. There are actually government grant given to independent school to operate. And there are good in government school also given autonomous status. And for example, Simin Secondary School, Yishun Town Secondary School, these are government autonomous school. So, and there's another group of schools are actually set up by missionaries, like the churches, the clans, associations, and different ethnic groups. For example, Paranakan set up SCGS. All these are the full schools. Full school is a 10-year school, starting from primary 1 to set 4. Yeah, and recently some of these full schools also extend 2 more years. So it's a 12 years trade program, if you are interested. Now, recently in the last 10 years or so, our government also set up this specialized school to take care of children with special needs or learning disabilities. For example, the Northlight, the Crest Secondary, the Spectra Secondary, and Assumption Pathway School. If the children cannot make it in the PSLE for 3 times, they may go to these such schools where special care will take care, special attention will be take care of your children's learning. In 1980s, the government also realized that we have to actually preserve our Chinese culture and traditions. That's where 10 special assistant schools were set up. In short, the SAP schools. So for parents who are interested to send your children to these schools with enriched Chinese culture and tradition, you may consider this. Next group, we have the independent schools. And some independent schools are SAP school as well, but not all independent schools are SAP school. Again, not all SAP schools are independent schools. For example, Nanhua High School is a government-aided school. So in the independent school, what is the difference is that the principal has a right to hire and fire teachers, and they have the right to do curriculum innovation. For example, in the 1990s, Chinese High actually decided that they do not want their children to do D&T, design and technology. Instead, all the boys were doing computer studies. And that's where they implemented the computer studies at a very, very beginning stage with all the 286 computers inside the lab. Yeah. So government has only 2 conditions. One is that for the independent school, they must implement bilingual education, and next they have to implement national education. Other than that, the principal and the team of teachers can decide how they are going to innovate their curriculum and instruction. And recently, after 2005, Singapore also put in a lot of effort to recognize talent development. Among our children, there are specific sports talent, arts talents, maths and science talents, as well as talents in science and technology. So the 4 schools listed here, Singapore Sports School, SOTA, NUS Maths and Science High School, and SST, all these are schools that focus on specific talent. Except the Singapore Science and Technology is a 4-year school. The rest of the schools are the 6-year school. And among the 2 schools, sports school and SOTA, they actually offer international baccalaureate as an exit examination. NUS Maths and Science School have their own diploma. Okay, so besides the types of school, there's also a range of programs. That's where placement come into play, right? So if your child receives their PSLE this year, they will be going to secondary one next year, and that's where you are faced with all this range of programs. If your child is going to PSLE next year, 2021, the selection criteria might be slightly different. So let's look at the nature of the program first. First of all, we have this 4-year course. Okay, this 4-year course actually ends with O-level examination, and the child may be promoted to a 2-year junior college or a 3-year Millennium Institute, which is a pre-university where students actually will be doing A-level examination as well as a diploma in commerce. Alternatively, they can also go to polytechnic, which is a 3-year course. For a 5-year normal academic course, they will have to take the N-level examination at year 4, and in order to take O-level at year 5. And they may be promoted just like, their contemporary in the express 4-year course. Yeah. Next, there are some children, they are high ability learners and they learn very fast. And in fact, taking O-level is a waste of time for them. And therefore, the government come out with this 6-year True Train program where the students are exempted from taking O-level examinations. Yeah, these students will take only GCE A-level examination or international baccalaureate if they choose the schools that offer IB. So, and about 10 to 11% of the students may go to a 4-year course, so-called normal technical, which enable them to attend ITE at the end of 4-year course. So right now, if we're talking about, the old system, these courses or these programs are not connected to one another. However, under the new PSLE scoring system, there will be connection. Okay, let me explain further. So let us now look at, for children who will be taking PSLE in 2021. This is the new scoring system that we're talking about. And I'm going to share with you how the comparison between the new and the old system. Yeah, old system refer to the 3-digit T-score, right? So there will be 4 subjects, examinable subject: mother tongue, English language, math and science. Each subject is 100 marks, and there are 8 achievement level listed on first column, 8 levels. Okay, and if we look at the 8 levels, level 1, AL1, refers to the old system A-star system, where the child will score 90 and above, right? AL2 is equal, 2, 3, and 4 is equivalent to the A grade in the PSLE 3-digit T-score system. So the range of marks is 75 to 85. When B is equivalent to AL5, the mark range is 65 to 74, and 6 is equivalent to C or D, 7 is D or E, and 8 is ungraded. Yeah. So if you understand this, you will see that now among the students who receive A grade in PSLE under the old system, in the new system, there are 3 categories, right? So they are further differentiated by categories. Yeah. So to make it very clear how each subject they fare. And this will facilitate later on, I will explain, so-called the subject-based banding. Yeah. So in the new system, the lowest aggregated AL score is 4. That means every subject, the child will score a 1, achievement level 1, which is equivalent to an A star, yeah, under the old system. Now, the highest score, possible score is 8 times 4 is 32. Right? So for this category of students, they may go to MT class. Okay, so, and the third column over here on the table show us the range of the score. So you might ask, how come there is a mark range of 5 for AL2, 3, and 4? Because it actually cut across 15 marks within this range. And based on our previous experience in the past 40 years or so, we noticed that, or 50 years or so, we noticed that most of the children, many children actually will score AL 2, 3, and 4, also called grade A. So in the old system, when you're A, sometimes, you have an A, but the T-score is quite low. Yeah, because there's a formula involved in that. However, in the new system, if you have a high A or mid-range A or a low A, it's all indicated. So it's much more clearer in that sense. Yeah? However, the advantage is also that your child is not differentiated by 1 mark or 2 marks. It is differentiated by category or score, which is this 5, okay, the range. Okay, let's move on. If we look at the PSLE aggregated AL score and the placement, okay, how is it associated? So I digested the information published in the newspaper and MOE website, and this is how I'm going to help you to understand the new PSLE T-score system. So we notice that these are the program in the first, so-called the first column. Express, there's some level of student or the top of the express student may go to IP, and the rest will still take their O level. So about 66.6% of the students will do that. So they see that the number is the same. And a normal academic student normally is about 20 to 21% of the student may go there. And the bottom 10 to 11% of the students may go to NT classes, yeah, or programs. Now, under the new system, 7 to 9 or 6 to 8, these are the good scores, or so-called 6 to 8, which means the child will, all 4 subjects, they'll score an AL2. So 2 times 4 is 8, right? So this is go to IP. Now, if the child missed by 1 category, so-called 7 to 9 AL aggregate, it means 1 subject score at 80 and 3 other subject is 85 and above. So if you think about it, it's not that difficult, right? So now you don't have to score 3 A stars or 4 A stars, which is 90 and above. So actually, it's a little bit more relaxed at the top level. So that I hope this sharing will help you to, be a little bit more relaxed in terms of your child's achievement or performance. Now, if the child is aiming at, just government or government-aided schools with autonomous school status, now 16 is a good score, which means 4 subjects, each subject score at AL4, which is more than or equal to 75 marks. And that is very doable. I believe most of the children will be under this category. Yeah. So what we need to know now as parents and as teacher, we will know what do we mean by 75 marks in a specific subject, and how do we help the child to achieve that. Yeah. So anything that is 16 and below is perfect. Yeah. So just in case if the child score more than 16 marks, so it is possible that your child score 1 subject score at more than 45. We know that if we think that 50 is a pass, and now it's only 45, 3 other subjects score more than 65, so it's 10 marks lower. Yeah, they still go to a very good, government or government-aided school. So not to worry so much. So most of the students will fall under this category. Only 20% of students will fall under, more than 22 or marks, or so-called AL aggregated score. So for 22, the child may score all 4 subjects at more than 45, okay, at or more than 45. So we know that 45 is AL6. 6 times 4 is 24. So that is the maximum. Yeah. And then the other one will be 26 and below. Now, you notice that for 22, the marks, aggregated marks 22, I highlighted it. It means that they might be able to go to a less popular school, and if they want to go to a more popular school, they may have to do a 5-year course. If they go to a less popular school, they may be able to do an express course. Yeah. So 22 is a arbitrary marks. It can go to multiple programs, and therefore 21 and below is a more clear-cut category of marks that we can think about in terms of placement. Okay, so some of parents, some of you might be interested to think about, having your child to do HCL, Higher Chinese Language. And if your child take HCL, they have an advantage in choosing SAP schools. Yeah. So those who like to continue to take HCL in secondary school, they must score at least AL8 in PSLE aggregated score, which means every subject they do an AL2. Those who have aggregate between 9 to 14, then they need to score HCL either AL1 or AL2, right? So it's either or. So AL1 or AL2 is equivalent to merit or distinction, yeah, under the old system. So students with the same aggregated scores, what will happen? Let's see. This is something that published at the MOE website. This is how the system is being set up. If one child score aggregated AL score is 7, but he does not take HCL, he will be considered to be posted first to his preferred school, right? And the next 4 children, you can see that they have an AL aggregated score of 8, but their performance in HCL is different. The second child has a distinction in HCL, so he get posted next. And the third child has got a merit in HCL. He got posted the third. And the fourth child has a pass in HCL and he got posted fourth. The child with the same AL aggregated score but did not take higher Chinese actually will be posted the fifth, right? And the child who score 1 mark higher or so-called 1 score higher, a different category, although has a distinction in higher Chinese, will be considered posting under the 6th position. So this is how the system will work. Now, so beside HCL, then citizenship might come into play as far as posting is concerned. Yeah? And if everything else being equal, then there will be a ballot by computer. Yeah. So I mentioned about subject-based banding, right? And I also mentioned about streaming. So we know that streaming is a pain in many parents' mind because some streams are preferred than others. However, we know that the purpose of setting up all this streaming system is to reduce attrition rate in our education system. And Singapore has successfully, reduced attrition rate in education through the use of streaming. However, streaming also has other negative connotation, such as you're a slow learner, fast learner, and all that. And therefore, in order to blur all these streaming labels, we want to increase flexibility in a good system, and therefore, we are going to look into subject-based banding. And this has been experimented, also called piloted in 28 secondary schools in the past few years. And next year, it will go into subject-based banding full-fledged. So students who are posted to NA, this is how it works, okay? It is by subject, right? It is by subject. Now, whatever the AL aggregated score your child obtained under the PSLE new scoring system, and they will be placed into a specific program. So if the child is posted to NA, they may attend classes in express program for the subjects they score well, at least an AL5 in a specific subject. And therefore, there's this flexibility, right? And similarly, for those who are posted to NT, they may be able to do the subject of their strength in NA program, not express NA, okay? And the subject the score also got considered scored well must be scored at least at AL6. Yeah, so that's the idea. And how many chances do they have to be able to do this flexible grouping? There are 4 chances. Okay, first at the beginning of Sec 1, then 6 months after Sec 1, and then at the end of Sec 1. And if they miss the 3 chances, the 4th time will be end of Sec 2. That's where they can be placed in another program of their own strength of a particular subject. So this is a new system that is going on right now. So this is a slide I showed you earlier. And in 1984, we set up our streaming system. All these programs seems to be unrelated, right? So we have 4 pieces as a system. However, under the new subject banding program, we now know that they are actually connected, right? So for example, a 4-year course, NT, they might be able to take the subject of their strength in a normal acad class. And similarly, in normal acad class, if they are strong in certain subject, they can take those classes in an express class. And for the students who are in a 4-year express course, if they do well at the end of Sec 2, they may be asked to skip the O level and they can go to a true train program. So true train program, there are two options, right? One is at the primary school when they receive the PSLE new scoring, and also at the end of Sec 2. So they can do that. Yeah. Okay, so let us now look at the differences between T-score and the aggregated AL score. So for the T-score, it is a relative score. If you notice that, the formula that is published at the Singapore Examination Board, it is with reference to the cohort average. So it is in comparison with the peers. However, under the new AL aggregate score, it reflects how well the student have done relatively to the learning objective of a particular curriculum. So it is not about with reference to your peers' performance. And therefore, there is a good reason that now, whether the learner or parents need to help the learner to build the mental capacity to say that, hey, I'm learning for myself and I should take a self-reference mentality rather than always comparing with my peers, because the comparison is not meaningful, right? Now, in the old system, the 3-digit T-score system, every mark counts, right? Few students have the same T-score. However, under the new PSLE scoring system, students are less finely differentiated because now they are grouped by the category, right, under the AL. And more students will have the same AL score. That's where the balloting, that's where the HCL and the citizenship come into play, yeah, beside the AL aggregated score. Under the old system, few schools have the same cutoff. The competition is very keen. Under the new system, more schools will have the same cutoff because now the cutoff is by category, it's not by specific score, right? So this, all in all, will give students and parents have a wider range of schools to choose from. So you can choose the schools depend on your child's strength, academic strength, their interests, their unique school program, as well as CCA's preference. Yeah. So I hope this will help you to understand the difference between the old system and the new system for PSLE performance. Okay, so much about the system and the score that we're depending on. Maybe we should now talk about some of the challenges that your children might face in the secondary school context. First of all, in secondary school, there'll be more number of subjects. In primary school, you have 4 subjects, but in secondary school, you have more. New subjects such as humanities, including literature, history, geography, will be brand new for them. At Sec 3, they even have 3 sciences, chemistry, biology, physics, and all that. Yeah, and even for the subject that they're familiar with, for example, Chinese language or mother tongue or higher Chinese or English, the requirement is also very different. Yeah, the demands are different. Yeah, it's higher. We will talk about that in just a minute. I go through all the challenges first. Now, your child might be top scorer in a primary school, so they are like a big fish in a small pond. However, when they are the top scorer of the particular primary school, they now should, transit to a secondary school where many top scorer like them joining this big pool of talent, then they may feel that they are a small fish in the big pond, right? So this is a very it is a natural process where the students, the learner themselves, compare themselves with others. Yeah, it will affect their self-esteem. Yeah, they have certain level of ego. So then how do they actually balance that, right? So this is a small fish in a big pond, or big fish in a small pond effect. Now, how do we actually help the child to smoothen the process is a very, very important subject. Now, I used to have a student, still remember his name, called David. Uh, one day I was like looking for him, and then his friend told me that, Madam Tan, don't you know that David never come to school on Monday? So, there is a pattern, right? Every Monday. And how long has this been like that? I say, oh, for more than a term, he has been doing that. So, prolonged duration. If we look out for these two elements, we know that the child is facing some serious issue in terms of self-esteem. So I, invited David and have a chat with him face to face, and I found out that actually, he suffered from very low self-esteem. He found that he is no good, not in a good academic standing with reference to all his other classmates. Um, and he feels so small, in front of his classmate. So I refocus his attention and say, instead of comparing yourself with your friends, what is your interest in learning? And he told me, oh, I like computing, I like to write computer programs and all that. I said, yeah, so if you like, then you should, continue in that line, and you should actually focus on that. They say, I don't think I'm any good on it. I said, but you have not tried. How do you know? So, and of course, I kind of like, fire him out on that part where I say, encourage him that he can do well. And after I see him, I also build a small team of boys to help him and do all this programming together with him. And in fact, he did, very, very well subsequently, and he scored 10 straight A's at Set 4. Yeah, those were the days where gifted children still have to do O levels. Yeah. Okay, so another challenge is also CCA. In primary school, CCAs are not compulsory, it is optional. However, in secondary school, CCAs are compulsory. And in fact, in some schools, your child might be required to do more than one CCAs. Yeah. And secondary school life is so colorful that your child might be overwhelmed by this, fun element in CCA and start neglecting study. Yeah. So that's where the time management issue that comes in, right? So how do we actually help your child to, better manage the time? For the child to manage his time rather than for parents to manage the child's time. And next, the learning pace is also very different in the secondary school context. For example, in secondary school, most of the homeworks are given a week or so to complete. If it is a project, they may be given half a year or 1 year to complete. And that's where the pace of learning come into play, where the students will need to actually know how to organize and pace his own learning, and not to keep everything until the end of the, like 1 day before the deadline and start, hurrying everything. And, that will actually drag the parents into stressful situation as well, right? However, as parents, we should not just, bot them and say, oh, you have to do your homework and all that. How do we actually build a system to help them will be the key. And the next challenge, of course, they are now the teenagers, they are officially into teenagers. They have many boundaries that they want to explore. And they are also exploring what are things that they can do and what are things that they should not be doing, their strengths, their weaknesses. They need to know more about themselves by learning from peers rather than parents and teacher at this stage of their life. So as parents, how do we actually help them to manage that? Is also that there are also many challenges in that. Okay, so let us now focus on the subject challenges. Okay. So at Tenopy, we have Eddie, who is also our English language teacher. Maybe he can help us to explain this slide. Eddie, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tan. Okay, so before I proceed, I just want to welcome all the newcomers who just attended the webinar. Okay, and of course, say hi to those on Facebook as well watching live. So once again, a quick reminder, we will be having a Q&A session at the end of the entire webinar. So please do feel free to drop your questions down, and Dr. Tan will review them later, and then she will answer your questions. Okay, so stay tuned for that. So now on to English. So I have been teaching English for close to 11 years now, before coming over to Tenopy. And I, of course, will have obviously seen the differences in standards from primary school to secondary school. So I'm very happy to explain to you what you can expect your child to experience, especially as far as English is concerned, when they come over to secondary school. So number one, the first point, let's look at writing, paper one. Okay, so now in paper one, your child obviously in the past for the PSLE, for the composition section, the free writing section, the section C, so to speak, would have, guiding points, bullet points to help them to craft their story, right? Now in secondary school, no more guiding points are given. You are just literally just given 4 questions, of which your child will have to choose one, and then that's it. That's it. Basically, there's no helping points, and if they do want to write a story, they have to come up with something from scratch. Now, that's the first thing. The second thing they need to know is that not only will they have 4 questions to choose from, of those 4 questions, 3 of them will no longer be about story writing. Basically, your child will be introduced to different genres of writing now, which also features the likes of expository writing, expository essays, descriptive essays, discursive essays, and argumentative essays. And these are basically foreign territory for your children, okay? And the reason why we're doing that is because if your child plans to go to junior college in future, junior college takes it a step further, where English, the paper that is known as English, will then be renamed to general paper. And this subject only features expository, discursive, and argumentative essays, meaning to say there's no more story writing anymore in junior college. And essentially what your child needs to do is to basically pick a topic that they're comfortable with and basically give their viewpoints with regards to that topic. So as you can see, there is a big change, and we need to prepare your children for that. So as you can see in bullet points 3 and 4 for writing, writing now demands extensive planning and coherent correlations. What do I mean by that? So in the past, in primary school, your kid can just go in, come up with a story from the top of his or her head, and then just go ahead writing. That's not going to be the case anymore. In secondary school, it is vital for your children to sit down even when the exam starts. Instead of just writing straight away, they need to plan some kind of skeletal framework to kind of organize their points and kind of put their points together and then move on from there. So as you can see, the 5th point, the show not tell method, which I'm sure some of your children may have learned in primary school, is one of the, the show not tell method basically is a way where, writers can basically write in a more colorful and flowery manner. Now, this show not tell method is no longer viable in secondary school, especially if they want to attempt a discursive or argumentative essay, because the show not tell method is only reserved for narrative writing, right? So if your child does not want to do narrative, and then this will no longer apply. So as you can see, it's a different ball game. Same subject, but different ball game altogether, different requirements. Obviously, there is a step up, and your child will need to basically step up as well in order to perform well for the examinations, okay? And we'll give you a short segment on how your child can do that later on. So now we move on to comprehension. So same thing, comprehension now, level up. And basically, your child will be facing new challenges that they've never faced before. So for instance, there will be fewer questions on direct reading. In other words, most of the answers that you will see or that your child is required to give are no longer found in the passage. They have to basically activate their understanding of how language is formulated, and come up with the answers as and when. Okay, and of course, the passages are now very heavily literary, meaning to say that you can expect the authors of these comprehension passages to use literary devices, metaphors, personifications, similes, all these things that your child may not have learned in primary school suddenly show up, and your child needs to be prepared for that. The answers, even answering the questions also requires more demand, they demand more precise phrasing. Meaning to say that even if your child answers in a particular way and that with the way they answer is inaccurate, or they do not really give what the question is looking for, your child may be penalized for that as well. So all this is something that they have to learn. It's a lot to take on, really, honestly, that they have to basically take on in 4 years. And of course, finally, like I said, questions are contextual and inferential, meaning to say that they have to make educated guesses. They have to play detective, so to speak. All right, the question may give, the passage may be about like a particular person, okay, the way the person behaves, and then the question asks, you know, how do we know, or what kind of a person do you think this character is? And the answer is not found directly in the passage itself. Okay, and so they also focus on language as well, puns, okay, play of words, short sentences, long sentences, okay, short paragraphs. All these all come into play, and your child has to be very aware of all this. So as you can see, very big step up from primary school to secondary school English. And of course, what your child may need will be a good support system, okay, in any way or form, okay, to help them to proceed further, okay, and to score well for English in their national examinations. So that's as much as I can say for English. And of course, if you have any questions, you may post them in the chat box and we will get to them later on. All right, that's it for me. Thank you, Dr. Tan. Back to you.
Thanks, Eddie, for sharing about the secondary English language at Tenopy. Now, let me explain about the secondary mathematics. So from primary to secondary mathematics is quite a challenge as well. Although your children might have very good foundation in mathematics, we know that in primary school they use a lot of bar drawing of those bar or blocks to understand the requirement of the questions, maths questions. In secondary school context, they are required to do it more mentally rather than visually. So this will take some time for the child to learn how to actually do more imaginative mathematical thinking. So a lot of questions will be more real life applications in the secondary school context, which is very different from the word problems in the primary school context. So at Tenopy, we will equip all these necessary skills for your children to tackle each type of different maths questions that prepare them for the exam. Next, we look at the secondary school science. If we look at the legend first, A, B, and C, A refers to knowledge with understanding, B refers to handling information and problem solving, and C refers to application of knowledge and process skills. Now, you note that these two so-called chart, you can see that in primary school context, the science focus on knowledge and application, 40 versus 60%. However, in the secondary school context, they are not only required to have more knowledge, more advanced knowledge, scientific knowledge. However, they also need to do problem solving. It's more than application. So they need to understand science conceptually in order to manipulate the conceptual understanding and solve the problems. So this is quite a skill to achieve. So, but fear not, at Tenopy, we help your child to deepen their understanding from 40 to 45%, and also to help them to understand the assessment requirement as far as complex application or problem solving is concerned. So by using structured approach and also proven application model, because the primary school has got 4 subjects. So at Tenopy, we have English program, math program, science programs, and other secondary school subjects. We are building on it. So after knowing how to help your child in their specific subject and notice the demands at the secondary level is actually quite different from the primary level, definitely, like at Tenopy, you'll be more willing to help parents to help the children to do that. However, what the parents can do at home, and will be the following to help your child to transit to secondary. First of all, communication. The communication between parents and child is always a two-way traffic. It's never one way. You might notice that in the context of Asian parenting, we might always engage in a one-way communication where the parents tell the kids what to do and expect them to follow the instruction. However, now that your child is going to be a teenager or is already a teenager, they may choose not to listen to you, right? So what do we do as parents? Actually, we have to practice active listening. We have to listen, not only with our ears, we must listen with our eyes, we must listen with our heart. As in like the Chinese character, you have ears, you have eyes, and your heart here. And you must be very focused. 意心, okay? Be very, very focused. Or listen to your child wholeheartedly before we can help them, okay? Because usually the child are not very sophisticated in terms of their communications. So there might be many hidden messages if go undetected if we are not listening with observation and the heart, and just use the ears is not very useful. And when we listen to them, when we communicate with them our thinking and our thoughts, that's a way that we give feedbacks, right? So your feedbacks to your child is matters, and this feedback actually, you don't have to tell them many of your own stories, and they're actually quite tired of that. Sometimes you may be able to use other people's stories, and if you want to provide solutions, I strongly suggest that do not provide more than 2 solutions. Provide 2, option A, option B, and you will actually rationalize with them. If you take option A, what are the advantages and disadvantages? Option B, similarly, advantages and disadvantages. And ultimately, the choice is your child. So let's be authoritative and not authoritarian. Authoritarian parents expect the children to follow instruction. However, authoritative parents offer guidance. Yeah. So which type of parenting style are you? You may want to actually think about that. Next, make yourself available to your child whenever they need you to just talk about. Do not wait until they receive the results, they receive the performance, or until they encounter problems. Yeah, always make a habit, like a routine, part of the family routine where you enjoy doing things together. You can talk to your child, and if your child is not comfortable for you to talk about their learning specifically, talk around it and not talk on the weakness only. Yeah. Sometimes, if we dig onto the child's weakness, it's as if like we are applying some salt onto the wound, and it's very, very painful, right? And the communication or the interaction might end up very negatively. Yeah. So always look at the bright side, always look at the strength of the child, and you'll be able to get somewhere. Yeah. Now, next is very important is to help your child to learn more sophisticated capacity to manage their learning, to organize their learning, and to also monitor their learning. And this is very important because you may have taught your child some strategies when they are young. However, now, as they enter the secondary school, they need more advanced and more sophisticated strategies. So, look for that kind of information, or maybe we can do another session on this and teach them how to, strengthen their learning capacity. It's very important. Now, always remember, encourage the child to be self-referenced. How do I progress from point A to point B? And in between, what are the steps to take? Please do not compare your child with others. Do not compare your child with the siblings. Do not compare with, so and so who are the top student in the class, or their cousins. Yeah, that is very, very detrimental. Yeah, trust me, it's very detrimental. Now, self-reference is always good because self-reference enables the child to focus on their strength and to tell themselves what they can improve on. Yeah. So, just a personal story that I can tell you, like, for example, all my children are they are already young adults. And my second one, who is a boy, he is a creative type, actually. Yeah. So he hated school, basically, and he doesn't like to go to school. He always pulled a long face, whenever he was in school. But and he was the last 5% in his cohort. I had to go to the school to meet the principal. And when I was meeting his principal one time, the principal actually said, "Look at your parents. They are also well established." Like, oh no, that was the worst thing you can ever mention to the child in front of his parents. So after secondary school, he was very determined. He told me, "Mama, I don't want to go to junior college. Junior college is not for me. I would like to go to polytechnic." I said, "Sure, you want to go to polytechnic. What are some of your options?" Say, "Oh, I know how to play computer game. Maybe I can go and do something related to IT." I say, "You know how to play the game, but is the poly going to have a curriculum to teach you how to play the game, or you're going to create the game? If you're going to create the game, you do not know programming at all. So, what are the poly courses that you like to choose from?" So that set him, thinking. And I noticed that actually when he was young, he can draw. He draw quite well. So I told him, I said, "Why don't you consider something related to your drawing, ability?" So and I brought back the issue where when he was like 4 years old, he joined this community center art competition. He got a medal on that. So that kind of like encouraged him, and he tried to perfect his skills on that. And today he's a concept artist and he's doing very well in school. Since he attend polytechnics program, I do not have to monitor his academic progress anymore, and he was one of the top scorers in his poly course. So the children have their own path and their own interests, their own strength. As parents, I highly encourage you to respect the children in that direction. Yeah, they aspire somewhere, let them be the person that they aspire to be. So ultimately, the key message here is to make them grow. When we want to make them grow, we need to provide them all these opportunities to do things for themselves, to experience different events, different thoughts, and different learning experiences, and pull the relevant learning experiences together. So with that, I end my part of the talk. But now we would like to share with you more information about our Tenopy programs. So can I pass the time now to Eddie? Eddie, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tan, again for your presentation. So once again, quick reminder, if you have any questions to ask Dr. Tan or myself with regards to the changes in secondary school, please feel free to do so in the chat. So what does Tenopy have to offer you? So obviously, we are Singapore's first live online tutoring platform, and we are obviously trying to build on that. And our learning framework, we dare say, is a lot different from what you may get from other players out there in the industry today. We basically do focus on data analytics. So what we do is that we kind of study the trends, we study the syllabus, we focus on like which questions your students normally don't do well in, which questions that they normally do well in, and of course from there the teachers take that knowledge and then they build on that, and we try to formulate a program that would best benefit your child. We also focus on differentiated instruction. Now, differentiated instruction is a huge thing in MOE now. They're talking about it. In fact, this was rolled out maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, but perhaps even longer. But the whole point is that MOE has begun to realize that even within a classroom itself, an individual classroom, there are students of different learning abilities. And what we teachers have been encouraged to do is to basically reach out to all students. So this is what's happening in MOE classrooms, and of course, Tenopy agrees with this approach, and we are trying to adopt that as well, because we really believe that no student should be left behind. We won't just focus on the good, the bright and the brilliant. Okay, you guys are fantastic, let's work on you. No. We also focus on the students who need our help the most, and our programs and our syllabus actually caters to that. So we will have challenging questions for the faster learners to take on. But for the learners who need more help, we will actually take the time to scaffold, okay, to basically guide their train of thought. We won't spoon feed them the answers, but what we will do is we will teach them how to think. In fact, one of my mentors, one of my favorite quotes that my mentors always tell me is that our responsibility to teachers, as teachers, is not to teach students what to learn, but how to learn. So this is our philosophy at Tenopy as well. We will build scaffolding. We will show them our train of thought. This is how I arrived at my answer, okay? And then slowly the students who are not as strong in the subject will get to see, oh, this is how the teacher does it. And then they try to learn it for themselves. They may not succeed in the first time, but that's the whole point, isn't it? Every day, step by step, just knowing a little bit more every single day, and then we reach our goal. Okay, we do have a dual teacher approach as well, meaning to say that we don't have just one teacher, but two teachers involved. So basically, many hands make light work, as the saying goes. So basically, sometimes a support teacher will be able to help maybe point out something that the lead teacher may have missed. So there are two kinds of teachers that we have at Tenopy. We have the lead teachers, and these are teachers who have obviously been have gone through NIE. In fact, all teachers have gone through NIE training because that's one of the prerequisites. But the whole point is that our lead teachers are those who are a bit more experienced. They have been in this industry for quite some time now. They basically know the ins and outs of the subject, and they will be able to guide your students. They know what the curriculum is like. They know what are the syllabus is like, and they know how to basically craft a lesson that will best facilitate your children's learning. So every class will have a lead teacher present to guide them through. And then we have the guiding teacher. So the guiding teacher basically works hand in hand with the lead teacher present. And essentially, sometimes, when the lead teacher is teaching, he or she may be a bit too caught up in the lesson, or they can't really stop because they're kind of trying to clear certain milestones in the syllabus. But of course, the beauty of having a guiding teacher is that if there is a student who kind of goes, I don't really understand what this teacher is saying, could you please explain? Then the guiding teacher will be able to basically take the student aside and say, okay, look, this is basically what the lead teacher is saying. This is the concept he's trying to get through. They get basically some one-on-one coaching in the kind of respect, and of course, it helps to broaden their understanding of the topic better. Okay, so basically that is the dual teacher approach. So this is our team. As you can see, an extensive team of very experienced teachers, and you can see the primary on the left side, you see the primary teachers, and on the secondary team, you see the secondary teachers, myself included. In fact, I'm wearing the same shirt, which is, I guess it's a, I mean, I have just one wardrobe, basically. And that's us. And we are happy to serve, and we are, our goals are basically the same as yours. We want your kids to do well, not just academically, but we want them to shine. We want them to discover the joy of learning. We want them to discover, the whole point of education, and that is to be a better person, than who you were the day before. I think if we do that, I think we're very happy to have accomplished this task. Okay, so next slide. So basically, these are our Tenopy science leads. Okay, and you can see there's hang on a second. We have Mr. Chai on the left, and we have Miss Lim on the right. So basically, extensive qualifications, as you can see. All right, your children are in good hands. Okay, let's move on. So what does the Tenopy teaching experience, learning experience entail? So first and foremost, as you can see at the very top here, we have interaction with classmates through classroom activities. So basically your children is not a passive learner. They don't just sit there and stare at the screen and then they get information spoon-fed to them. We actually engage them. We make them think. We say, hey guys, this is something that a concept that you need to learn. How is the best way you can go about doing it? If you can see on the left side, basically, your children will get to ask questions, and through video, audio, or in the chat, and the teachers will respond to that. Okay. Now, of course, we also have the front row view. What does that mean? Very simple, right? In a traditional classroom, sometimes your children can't choose where they want to sit. Usually what the teacher does is that they put the taller students behind so that they won't block the shorter students, right? So I wasn't very tall, so I got to sit in front all the time. But I do know that the students behind, sometimes they have difficulty seeing the teacher. Some of them are quite poorly myopic and short-sighted, so they can't see. Everything's a blur to them. Well, this doesn't have to be a concern in Tenopy because you get to see the teacher up front in personal, just like you and I right now. And you know, everything, all the notes and everything are all at your fingertips as well. Okay. On the right, you will see that we also have pop quizzes for our students. Okay. And of course, you know, just to test their understanding at regular intervals. And of course, we always have Q&A sessions, tips and tricks on how to perform better in the subject. Okay, and one thing that is not focused here, that is not featured here in this slide, is that Tenopy lessons are at your fingertips 24/7. That means even after the lesson is over, your child can still log on to the Tenopy portal and access the lessons that have already been covered. So for instance, there is a common test tomorrow on, like, say, acids and alkalines, right? Your child kind of goes, oh, I remember that this teacher said something about this concept, and they want to go and retrieve that lesson. They can. So the night before the exam, even they can sit in front of the computer, pull up the lesson that they remembered, fast forward, scroll forward, or whatever, go to the part of the lesson where the teacher talks about the topic, and there you have it. And of course, this is not possible from regular face-to-face tuition, because you can't possibly call your teacher up at 3 in the morning, hey, I need your help. All right, you'll be screamed at, right? But for Tenopy, no such problem. Log on, the lesson is available to you. Okay, so basically that's it. All right, now let's move on. So we are going to roll out a new initiative known as Tenopy XL, and basically Tenopy XL helps parents who basically with a program at a more accessible price point. Okay, so essentially what Tenopy XL offers are basically the same perks, okay, of a Tenopy standard, okay, as you can see right here in the screen. All right, and of course, if you have any questions regarding this, okay, feel free to tell us in the chat. Okay, so this course is only available for primary 4 to 6 students as of now. However, we do plan to roll out this initiative to all levels if possible. So Tenopy XL, do take advantage of this if you can. Okay, and in fact, right now we have an online promotion. If you wish to sign up, there's a QR code ready for you. Please take a snapshot of it, go to the website, and you can, you know, proceed from there. Use the code TenopyXL10 for 10% off our XL classes as well. So on top of getting, you know, your lessons at a more accessible price point, you get a further discount. So this is available for these 2 days, 19th and 20th December. Do take advantage of that. Okay. All right. Now, I believe that it's time for a Q&A session. So we do have a few questions being posted. So let's basically review the questions. Okay, thank you. I have seen some of the questions, and let's start with the first question directed at Dr. Tan.
Mhm.
Okay, let me just, okay, so basically one parent has asked Dr. Tan, if the preferred school, I'm presuming that the school that the parent wants to send their child to has an AL of 6 to 8, okay, what is the child's AL, what should it be if the child is doing DSA?
Actually, for DSA, this will be conducted way before the PSLE. Once your child get through the DSA, then it really does not matter. Right now, they say as long as they have a T-score of 200, they can actually go to the school where they admitted to through DSA. So PSLE aggregated score may not come into play. Yeah. So even if the child exceeds AL8, because the child has passed DSA, the child will still go to the school. Yeah.
Is there a minimum requirement, however, that they need to get? Like for instance, I do know for secondary school to polytechnic, even though the child gets selected for the DSA, they do need to meet some kind of minimum score. If not, the DSA will be revoked. So what about for primary to secondary? Is it the same case, do you think?
Well, you will have to ask the school, because the school may be able to make specific decisions, especially the independent school. Yeah.
Right.
But
Sure.
as far as I know, some schools make that decision as long as, for example, School of the Arts, they will say, 200 and above. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's under the old system for T-score. For the new system, I do not have the information. So it's best to ask the school for information.
I see. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Tan. Okay, I do have a few more questions. Now, I do have a question regarding the English slides that we were covering about internal coherence and correlations, as well as show and tell, show not tell rather. We will come back to that in a short while, but first, I do have another question for Dr. Tan. So this parent has asked, in the SAP schools, which tiebreaker is more important, school placing or HCL score?
School placing, meaning?
I believe this parent is referring to AL. I think the AL achievement level of the student, I believe. In fact, if the parent can hang on, if the parent can clarify that. But yeah, this is what the parent asked. So in a SAP school, which tiebreaker is more important? Is it the AL score? That's what I'm assuming the parent is asking, or the HCL score?
I think if you recall the slide that I showed with the students with the same AL but with different performance in terms of the higher Chinese scores, that will be the sequence. So if your child have the same AL score with 4 other children, but your child has got a distinction in higher Chinese, then your child will get to be posted first. Yeah. So that will be a preferred score, so on and so forth. Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, the very first level of selection will always be the AL. Is that correct?
Yes, I would think so. Yeah, AL then consider higher Chinese. Yeah. Okay. So if you have a good AL score without higher Chinese, you still can do so. Yeah.
I see. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, another question also for Dr. Tan. Is it advisable for students on the Express O-level stream to switch to an Express IP stream?
At the end of Sec 2, if the child is perform very well, and the child is mature enough that they know that in the IP program actually requires the child to be very disciplined and relatively independent in their learning. If your child fits this picture, then you might want to encourage the child to switch on to IP to skip that O level. Yeah.
Sure. But I'm assuming that this only applies to schools that actually offer the IP program.
Definitely. Definitely.
Okay, sure. Okay, in fact, actually, I do have another question with regards to the subject-based banding, because we've been talking about that. So, what are the benefits of a student taking NA, for a student in normal academic taking O-level English, or a NT student taking NA English in terms of their national exams? Like, would they get bonus points, or I mean, how does it work? So let's say if your child is in NA but is doing O-level English rather, or O-level mathematics rather than NA mathematics, what kind of bonuses or benefits would that child have in terms of the O-levels or the N levels they're sitting for?
Good question. So basically, under the O system, you know that a student who is from NT, if the student is doing so well, the parents can actually transfer the child to an NA class. So that's under the O system.
That's right.
But it comes in a package. Right now, the subject-based banding enables the child to say, if I am from NT class, but the English is my strength of subject, and therefore I can attend English classes in the NA class, and that will actually increase my opportunity to learn more, and learning in a fun way, build self-esteem, and it might in turn help the child to do well in other subjects, right? So in that case, it is easier for the child to shift from NT to NA context. Whereas in the NA, if the child is able to, attend classes with the express student in the subject of his or her own strength, we know that NA, they have to pass the N-level test. NA, yeah, they have to pass the N-level test at year 4. Then at year 5, they are still doing the O level, right? So in that case, it also benefits the child, because then, learning is more fun, is at his or her own pace. and you can actually motivate the child. Yeah. And when it comes to year 5, they still have to do the O level.
I see.
Mm.
Okay. So is it like, so let's say there's an NA student doing O level science, for example, so when that student is in Sec 4, will that student actually do O level science with the rest of their other O level students?
This is something I'm not very sure.
Okay.
It depends on how the school is going to administer this.
Mm,
I think the N level certificate come in as a package at the moment.
right.
I'm not very sure about that. But
Mm,
right now, what I can imagine is that it will benefit the students from taking the N level, because you're learning more than the N level stuff.
advanced
Yeah,
topics.
so
Yeah.
you definitely do well in our N level. So you do not
Okay.
have to worry that the child cannot do well in N level. Yeah,
Okay.
it will
Makes
pull up the
sense.
marks, and therefore it will be more, smooth, and it's smoother for the child when it goes to the year 5. Yeah,
Mm. So essentially, I think differs with individual schools lah. So I think it's
that's
best for
right.
the parent to check with the
That's
school
right.
in question whether,
Yeah.
yeah, okay,
And
fantastic,
I'm quite
okay.
sure for NA student, if they do very well, there is a chance to switch to Express as well.
Yes, that's right. In the middle, like in
That's right.
Sec 1 and Sec 2, they can actually laterally transfer
That's right.
upwards. Yeah, that's
That's
right.
right. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so finally, the question that one of the parents was asking me with regards to, let me just draw up the question again. So yeah, secondary school writing. So let's talk about internal coherence and correlation. So Tenopy team, do you mind just going back to the slide if you can?
Sure.
Thank you. All right. So basically, so a parent has asked me, okay, what does it mean by internal coherence and correlations? Now, simply, it means this. When you write, especially when it comes to expository, that means when you're discussing a particular topic, like say the environment, science and technology, the arts, community, there'll be questions like, for example, do you, like, for instance, what are the benefits and disadvantages of public transport, for instance? So when you get a question like this, what internal coherence and correlations mean is that your child basically needs to formulate a proper response. Now, in Tenopy, what we do is that we teach students how to, a system where they can basically provide a topic sentence, elaborate on that sentence, give evidence to support their claims, and finally link it back to the question. This is a very common technique that is taught in many schools, and in Tenopy, we also on my lessons actually advocate this, and I will teach students basically how to craft an answer. The whole point of this is to create what is known as coherence. That means when your examiner, who's going to be reading your essay, they read your child's essay rather, they will realize as they go from paragraph 1 to paragraph 2 that there is a smooth transition, there's a smooth link. Okay, what you do not want to have is a situation where your points are all over the place, right? You talk about this particular topic in like paragraph 1, and then in paragraph 2 you talk about this topic again, and then you jump to paragraph 3 and you talk about something else completely. That is basically a lack of coherence, and that can potentially affect your child's score, because the readability of your child's essay kind of takes a hit. And it seems that like basically, if I were to be reading an essay like this, it's like, oh my god, your points are all over the place, I can't really follow you. It's like you're talking about this now, then you're talking about that, a totally unrelated subject, and then you jump back to the same question again, that's the previous point. So we're trying to avoid that. So what we do in our lessons is that we kind of teach our students, package all your everything that you want to talk about in this particular topic in one paragraph, elaborate nicely, and then move on to a second paragraph, link it to the next paragraph. And when your examiner reads that, it's easy on the eyes. Your examiner goes, oh, this is good reading. Okay, even though there could be grammar mistakes here and there, but this is good reading, I can actually follow. And when your examiner does that, your child inevitably does better. Okay, so now let's go to the next question. Someone asked me about show not tell. Okay, so basically someone says, if show not tell uh you know techniques are no longer viable, okay, what other methods are available? Now, when it comes to writing narrative, your child can still do the show not tell, that's fine. But if they want to write expository or argumentative essays, then my recommendation is to use the PEEL system, the one that I'm going to be teaching in my classes. Point, evidence, elaboration, evidence, and link. It is a very commonly taught a technique, but it is very, very helpful. We have other techniques as well. For instance, we can teach them how to basically see cause and effect, basically, and of course, for this, we will also need your child to basically beef up on general knowledge. Basically, they need to understand what's happening in the world today so that, they have something to say. All right. So basically, we will be covering all that in our secondary courses. Okay. So the time now is we're at the 3 minutes to 3:30, and we try to end as early as we can. If you have any more questions, I believe that the panelist team we can take them offline. You can leave us your email address. We will be happy to reply you via email if possible, if you want. Okay, but if not, we would like to thank you all for showing up for today's webinar. Thank you to everyone here on Zoom and to you as well on Facebook as well. And of course, once again, thank you, Dr. Tan, for taking your time off your busy schedule to give us the presentation on PSLE and the expectations of secondary school life. So thank you so much once again. And again, if you have any questions, then please feel free to leave them in the chat. All right. So we will officially call this meeting to an end, shall we? I think unless there are any burning questions from the attendees. But if not, I'd like to thank all of you for coming, and we hope to see you again soon. And of course, if you haven't already, do sign up for our courses. Okay. Thank you very much. See you guys
Thank
soon.
you. Bye-bye.